In the previous episode, we explored a simple but useful definition of ego. That ego is attachment to a wrong image or belief about myself. Now, this might look like an innocent mistake, but actually the implications are really not so innocent. So I'd like to propose that actually all human evil comes down to this phenomena of identifying ourselves with what we are not. So in this Soulcast episode, we're going to explore really deeply the idea that all our collective and personal woes come down to this basic thing of not knowing who we are and therefore identifying with this, that, and the other of what we are not, and then defending that and building that, this phenomena. So my name is Gillian Soers, and I've been enthusiastically exploring all aspects of consciousness as a Raja Yoga meditation student and teacher, but also as a professional personal development trainer for almost 30 years now. Knowing who I am, this is a deep psychological need for all humans. In fact, if we look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, really after the basic physical and security needs are fulfilled, the rest of the levels are really about building an identity. And these needs are not just a casual interest, they're really a driving, motivating force for humanity. So when we don't know our innate spiritual nature, then the mind creates identities out of thousands and thousands of different images, beliefs, and different aspects. The ego can form an identity out of literally anything. But let's start with our appearance, because that's something that's very important to most human beings. Now, if someone compliments your appearance, generally it makes us feel good. If they criticize it, it makes us feel bad. We also commonly use the words I. We say, oh, I'm overweight, I lost weight, I'm looking younger, I'm looking older, etc., etc. Now, nobody uses this phrase, I'm a weightless, formless point of light, but my costume has put on a few kilos. Now, of course, that might sound like ridiculous to be speaking like that, but the fact that we so easily use the word I am sick instead of my body is sick shows that it's so natural and normal to identify the self with the appearance or the health, the state of the body. And this identification is so deep that a loss of appearance feels like a loss of self. And so then people lose their self-esteem based on their appearance, or they suddenly get a boost of confidence based on their appearance. Again, this is just so all-pervasive in society that it's really not questioned. And although people say, oh, beauty is within, it's very superficial. People don't really mean it. I think all of us can be affected by this attachment to this wrong image. In other words, to the image of the body, which is not the image of the soul. And so the ego has really hijacked the consciousness and made it believe that anything to do with the appearance has something to do with the soul. So in meditation, we make that contrast more and more clear because it's so mixed up in the world's consciousness. And so we make this sort of avatar in the matrix something of utmost importance. So this is one of the tricks that the ego plays on us. And appearance is just one factor. And then there's all those factors related to appearance, but that's just one factor. So multiply that by thousands and thousands of different factors. So every day, each one of us is walking around in this man-made mental construction of a castle we call myself, my identity, my image. And we know deep down that image, that identity, that security based on all those different factors it's just not stable. A wave can come at any time. Your looks fade, your your bank account fluctuates, your job success, your failures, like anything can happen to any one of those factors at any moment. So it's not just big losses to our castle, dramatic losses, but it can be as simple as a look of disapproval or an opinion that contradicts our own. These are all little waves that can shake that sense of security at any moment. So wherever there's ego, identifying with things that we are not, and everyone does it, absolutely everyone. And so wherever there's ego, there has to be fear and insecurity. As sure as spring follows winter, it's an indisputable mechanism of how the ego works. Now, everybody's ego is made up of very different things, but basically deep down, everybody is relying on an image that's not reliable, and therefore everybody on some level is insecure. So even if someone might look very calm, very confident, very unbothered, they will have their own special private things that they've built their image from. Even if it's based on, and we made a video about this 2 videos ago, even based on spiritual factors, your sense of security can be shaken if it's based on anything that's not your truest self-identity. So we can actually trace back all negative behaviors, all of them, to some form of insecurity or fear. And then if we trace back the insecurity and fear, it comes down to ego, in other words, to having a wrong or false belief or image about myself. Let's look at another example of a behavior which has its clear basis in insecurity and therefore ego. So the behavior is arguing. Now, when we argue, what's happening is that we have an idea, a way of seeing things, a belief about something. And it's not just that there's the idea and there's the self, but what happens when we identify with something that we're not, in which case our idea, is that our identity becomes merged with the idea. And usually it's not just merging with an idea. There's a whole story behind it about how I'm right, I'm more educated, I'm more experienced, I know the problem better than you. Now then someone comes to oppose the idea, but it doesn't just feel like they're opposing the idea. It literally feels like they're attacking us, because our identity is merged with that idea. We've become that idea. And that's why our bodies respond when we're arguing as if we are literally under attack. So our blood starts racing and our muscles start tensing and our voices get louder, and we're literally responding as if we're fighting for our lives. And that's because for the ego, the idea and the self are one. So it is as if I'm fighting for my life. And so now I'm fighting for my life against you, and then you end up responding in the same manner, and we're both fighting not just for the correctness of an idea, but as if we're fighting for our lives. And this is the trick of the ego. Now, you can see it in operation with yourself and another person, but then put that on a societal level. Our idea, our collective idea, and you lot are threatening that idea, that way of life, that belief. And then it can very quickly come from not just arguing about ideas, but that sense of we've got to defend ourselves can then turn into violence. Yeah, so it's, again, the ego is not just an innocent private thing happening in my consciousness. Collectively, it becomes a very dangerous phenomenon of a group of people identifying with something and then defending it and attacking anyone who they think is threatening that. And don't forget that behind this violence and hate is always fear. and insecurity, that you're going to attack what's mine, I'm going to lose what's mine, so I'm going to attack you, I'm going to destroy your castle before you have a chance to destroy mine. And we are all capable of this evil, because we're all capable of fear, and we're all capable of attaching our sense of well-being to dozens, thousands of factors that are not really ours, but in substitute for a real sense of self, which is totally lacking in the world. We all are attaching to these different factors. The level of defense is only according to the situation. We're very lucky if we're only defending our ideas in an office meeting and not defending them on the battlefield. So another seemingly sort of harmless or innocent behavior, which is really based on the same mechanism, is that of gossip. So what's going on when we gossip is that we get together with others and basically we start to reduce the image of someone else's castle in our eyes. So we say, well, look what they're doing. We would never do that, would we? So we're up here in some way and those people are down there. So it gives the ego a boost, basically by putting others down and putting ourselves up. And of course, if we don't have any common friends to gossip about, then we'll talk about celebrities, which is why celebrity gossip is so popular. So we say, well, you know, they look like they have everything and their life's wonderful, but you look, even their husband left them, even they have this issue. So again, we're searching to make ourselves feel better. Our ego gets some bricks at the expense of attacking someone else's castle. And again, it might look like an innocent comment, but its intentions are definitely not innocent. So this is just a few examples, but we could literally take any single negative behavior and we can trace it back to this subtle or gross insecurity and fear. And where is that fear coming from? It's coming from defending a false or wrong image of myself. Why it has to be defended is because it's not real. And I know that it's vulnerable. And so this is how the ego mechanism totally confuses us. And for most people, it just makes their life a bit miserable and chaotic. But again, take it to the extreme. And then we're talking about the hate and the violence and the I'm going to ruin you in order to protect myself. Or I'm going to attack you in order to gain some bricks for my castle so that I can feel more secure. And this need for security is deep, deep, deep in the human psychology. So let's look at a list of a whole range of these negative behaviors that all have their basis in insecurity and therefore defense of the ego, the castle. Arguing, blaming, criticizing, complaining, controlling, manipulating, misleading, competing, demanding, avoiding, gossiping, lying, comparing, boasting, bossing, shouting, cheating, worrying, pretending, possessing, sabotaging, self-limiting, favoritism, discriminating, insulting, rejecting, judging, obsessing, humiliation or humiliating. Now, I've shown this list to groups of people all over the world in very different contexts, and they all admit that they do these behaviors on some level, some of them on some level, some of the time. So we're all guilty of these to some degree. But when I ask people, do you still think you're good people, despite the fact that you've even said that you're boasting, bossing, criticizing, complaining, arguing, demanding? And they all say, yes, we definitely are good. And this is universal. I think it's because we deep down know that the soul is good. But these behaviors hijack us. Actually, the fear hijacks us. And then these behaviors are the result of that fear. And that's why when people get angry, they often say, oh, it wasn't me, I wasn't being myself. Even if that person is often angry, they'll still say it in that way, that this wasn't my real self, I wasn't being the real self that I know I am. And so in a sense, we all have this dilemma that we know we're good, and yet continually we fall into these behaviors. And it feels like they're out of our control. And it's because once fear and insecurity come into the equation, it's a very powerful force. You know, that if you're in fear, you will be doing anything to make yourself feel safe. And so that looking safe could appear as gossiping, just to make you feel more secure in yourself. One of the ego's favorite tricks, I think, is to make you angry and then to create an identity out of that anger. So I'm an angry person, and now to feel shame about that image of myself as an angry person. So next time you notice any of these behaviors in yourself or others, or if you notice that you, even in your mental level, that you are attacking someone in your mind or defending yourself against someone even in your mind. So instead of judging yourself and others, try and just observe what's happening in your mind and your body, and you'll begin to notice that state of unease, of discomfort, of anxiety, irritation. And really what that is the fear. And the behaviors, the arguing, the boasting, these are all attempts to get rid of the source of the fear. So it's not a question of letting it go. It's really a question of observing what's going on. If you can be observant enough to realize that, oh, the reaction's coming because I'm defending an image. And what is that image? Poof. It's a false one, because they all are. So it takes time to do this inner processing. But once you kind of get used to it, it's like a detective going, that's what's going on. I'm getting upset because they're insulting my idea, and I'm used to thinking that I'm so smart, and someone's questioning it, and then you can end up laughing at the soul's need to identify so strongly with an image of being smart, or so strongly with an idea being right. And once you can see it and laugh at it, you're free of it. And the more you do that, layers and layers and layers of this ego are getting stripped away, and then you become lighter and lighter and lighter, because you haven't got so many things to defend, because you're not a thing, and you know you're not a thing. Now, this state of fear and insecurity, it can be very subtle and almost constant. So it becomes very obvious when something triggers us. So when you're triggered, it's really showing where you have a strong sense of identity invested in a particular thing. But because this habitual conditioning of the self to identify with something is there, and it's so deep, it can really lead to just an ongoing sense of restlessness, peacelessness. I have to be doing something. I have to be protecting something. And it's so unconscious. And this is why, well, one thing we can do is to, when we are triggered, that's a time to really uncover the big triggers, the biggest things that we're identifying with. But on an ongoing basis, the more we meditate, and I use the word meditate loosely, the more we contemplate, reflect on, dwell on this truth of the eternal soul being the source of everything. And so everything that we're looking for outside, so in a lot of cases a sense of security, the soul is absolutely secure, and nothing in the matrix drama that we're in can actually damage the soul or take away any of our good feeling. Now this takes a lot of time to really incorporate this ideas deep into our consciousness so that we feel it, so that we can laugh at things that other people take so seriously, because we know there's no real threat to the self. And so that's why we need to kind of, I think, balance out the kind of figuring it out, why I'm triggered by something, and recognize our particular attachments, but also on a general level to know that the more I contemplate the self, the real self, the less I will be taking all these labels and attachments and false images to be serious and to be real and to be me. And so while there is still that kind of deep, unconscious, subtle collection of insecurities that are coming from generally not knowing the self as a soul and feeling vulnerable in this earthly dimension, we will go into soothing habits. Yeah, so all of us have different habits that we use to soothe us. It could be smoking, eating, drinking, scrolling, you name it. So these are often attempts to soothe the mind from that general anxiety that we have. And that's why, most humans are self-medicating in some form, because they're not secure in the self and looking for security in a very insecure dimension, which is the nature of the physical dimension. So in the last episode, I mentioned the example of myself having stage fright and then asking myself, what does Jillian want? And recognizing that it's the Jillian, the ego wants the applause, and therefore there's a danger of not getting it, and therefore the anxiety comes. And then in a moment, asking what the soul wants and having the word nothing come to mind, and that word nothing completely took away all the anxiety and fear. Now, the reason it could happen in a second was because actually these concepts, I've been thinking about them for years and years and years. So when I say the word soul or silence or nothing, there's an awful lot of experience and contemplation behind those. And so that's why if we really seriously want to be free of suffering and ignorance, and therefore free of the ego, this has to become like a deep obsession, interest, hobby, to know the self, and therefore to know what I am not. And really to understand the ego is to really understand what I am not. So in the next few episodes, we're going to look more deeply into exploring some of those what I am not aspects, so that we can more clearly understand when we are identifying ourselves with them and losing ourselves in them. So again, thank you very much for listening. And if you are interested in this kind of topics and conversations, I really do encourage you to subscribe to the channel. And also any comment or like or anything like that will definitely help the algorithm to send the video out to other people as well. So thank you for listening, and see you in the next video.